You've been here for the past week. Dermot, you've been at your fair share of these. You're writing about it today. Plenty of people are. Has it been a good week?
Oh, it's been a terrific week, Joe. The people have been most hospitable. The weather's been unusually kind, and the golf has been spectacular in places. Not all through, not from an Irish perspective, but generally speaking, it's been really exciting, really interesting.
Aside from being asked about Chris Froome at every turn, which we'll get to, how have you found the week, Paul?
Really enjoyable, Joe. Really, really enjoyable. As a young boy, I first heard of this area when I was 8 years old, and it was through a film that was done on the Tour of Ireland that year, and an Irish winner, Paul Elliott, who was a brother of Seamus Elliott, and Paul Elliott won the Tour of Ireland that year. And the reference, the relevance to where we're sitting now is that one of the stages went over for the first time this famed Gap of Mamore. And the Gap of Mamore is probably the only climb, is the only climb on this island that has eluded me. I'd never actually ridden up it before. And it seemed strange to me that I would climb Alpe d'Huez, race up Alpe d'Huez in the Tour de France, and yet never ride up the Gap Mamore. But on Thursday morning at 7 o'clock I got up, and then the landlady I was staying with had an old bike out the back, and I borrowed it from her, and I rode out through the Naff and up the Gap Mamore and stood for a moment at the top reflecting on where my life was and, and where it was going and why I was turning round. And cycling back to the Irish Open and not to the Tour de France, which I suppose is a kind of story in itself. But more than happy to be here. A real sense of being on holiday, a real sense, more than anything, of an event that has been embraced by the local people, by golf lovers, and just a tremendous effort by the people of Donegal, who've really, really done their county and done the event and done the golf course a brilliant service this week. It's just been a joy being on this golf course for the last few days.
Yeah. Dermot, in your piece you talk about this location, once referred to by John Hume as the Forgotten Peninsula, and it's been thrust worldwide into golfing consciousness by this Dubai Duty Free Irish Open, which is a nice way of putting it. And you're obviously out and about walking around, because you talked about just seeing the various scenes of people enjoying their ice creams and pushing their kids around, and a very kind of a festival feel to the whole thing is what you found, even if the leaderboard isn't quite what we would have wanted.
Yeah, you'll have to excuse me. I've just had a mischievous thought of Paul. I wondered if that bike was a tandem and he and the landlady were doing the cycling together. Sorry, forget that. Sorry, Joe. What was that you wanted to know?
Well, I think we're all a bit thrown now.
Yeah, that's me. Don't mind me.
You were talking about the festival feel of the whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, as I say, the weather has been the key, really, Joe. You know, but I think a hugely important aspect of it is that the European Tour have indicated that this has been the easiest Irish Open they've had to stage. They've staged in recent years, essentially because of the way Paul used the word, the way the locals have embraced it. I mean, at club level, at council level, the Gardaí. They've even been, the PSNI on the other side of the border have been involved as well. And everybody has just rode in behind it to make it a memorable event. It's certainly one that I'm going to remember for a long time. Well, if God spares me a few more years. It's just been lovely.
Okay, that's interesting, because there is the other side, which I think Dennis Walsh in the Sunday Times and Philip Quinn have touched on to an extent, and they wonder if we hit some kind of ceiling here with the Irish Open. So, Philip Quinn makes the point that as the third round unfolded, the rankings of the leading 8 players were 199, 124, 163, 153, 241, 581, 442, and so on in that vein. And he said, for all the progress made by the tournament since McIlroy took the reins, the Irish Open needs to take a long, hard look at itself, and questions need to be asked. For starters, is the current slot, a fortnight before the Open, conducive to drawing stellar names? And then makes the point as well that it's not the most accessible place, which is part of the story. And Dennis Walsh is just wondering, similar kind of vibe. I don't want to misrepresent him. He's talking about a lot of the upsides as well. but does make the point that the field has been disappointingly shallow. Even though there were 2 players from the world's top 50, there were only 5 players in total from the world's top 50. Says compare that to Royal County Down. We had 14 at Royal County Down when, as we know, Rory called in favours. So it's fantastic in so many ways, and it's come a long way from a decade ago. But I wonder, can we do more with it, or is this about the level it's going to pitch in at?
I'd be inclined to think that this is about as good as it gets. I mean, in terms of world ranking points, this is the biggest tournament in the world this weekend. It wouldn't carry as much money as the corresponding event in the States. The Greenbrier, I think it is, isn't it? We've John Rahm back defending the title. We've Rory McIlroy, who's world number 6. What more do we want? I mean, we had a couple of good years, really good years, when Rory really pushed out the boat at Royal County Down, and we had a very strong field at the K Club, and we had a good field last year. Justin Rose, I think, played last year. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I've been around quite a while, Joe, in terms of Irish Opens. It started out by Carroll's, the sponsors, buying players, effectively. They paid serious appearance money. Tom Watson was Open champion, came to the Irish Open in 1975, and he got $25,000 for his trouble. And that was the way the thing operated in those early years. Sevi Ballesteros, who was the number 1 European at the time, he was also paid handsomely for playing in it. Now, we don't have appearance money anymore because the European Tour, in their wisdom, and I think they're right, opted to put the money into the prize fund. They felt like it's quite reasonable to deduce from appearance fees and everything else that you're going to have a reduced prize fund if you're going to operate that way. They didn't want that, and now we have a straight up situation where you have $7 million as a prize fund, and the winner gets 1/6 of that. And there are no appearance fees that I'm aware of.
Okay.
And that's the way it is. Now, if you want to change that, you're going to have to reintroduce, in my view, appearance fees, because it's not an ideal week. We know that. I mean, the ideal week is next week at the Scottish, which is a lead into the Open Championship. It's going to bring the Americans over. It's difficult logistically, I imagine, for Americans to come over, say, for this week, take a break, and then it doesn't make an awful lot of sense to do it that way. But it's a hell of a lot better than playing it in May, with everything that has involved in recent years.
Well, as with everything in golf, I defer to my colleague here, Dermot, and I'm pleased he made that point about the appearance fees, because I was about to prod him and say, well, what about back in the glory days of Portmarnock and Royal Dublin, when you'd got the great Americans coming over, and Sevi and Faldo and Woozy and all these big names playing, and we don't have that this week.
And isn't an appearance fee to get a Justin Rose over far more valuable to everybody, bar the poor fella who finishes 98th in the tournament and makes however many grand less? Isn't that just better for the tournament to pay appearance fees? I would take Justin Rose over, and I no disrespect, they're all fabulous players. I go and watch any of them routinely when I just walk the course at random, but I'd take Justin Rose over 20 of the lads out there whose faces I don't recognise.
But that's not the way the tour is constructed, Joe.
I know that.
You know that perfectly well. You've been mischievous now. I mean,
I'm just saying we could lower the prize money that they're all getting. Because Keith Pelly's big sales pitch.
Is he being mischievous? I mean, Padraig is talking about, what do they call it? There's this phrase they use, is it hello money, or they didn't do what? He has some phrase for the appearance money. He used it recently. I was intrigued by it. So it's not as if, to use a well-worn phrase, it's gone away. You know, they haven't gone away, these appearance fees.
Oh, no.
They're still being given out.
Yeah.
And they're still getting the results for that. And, I actually agree with Joe that... it would definitely benefit. I mean, there's a paragraph from Philip's piece in the Mail, that really rang true to me. The Irish Open has always been at its most magnetic when the home fires were burning and the crowds get behind the local hero. Yesterday, amid the showers, there was a sense of a damp squib about Ballyliffin. I don't know how any of us around this table can deny that fact. Yesterday when Rory came in, there were streams of people walking off the golf course, at a time when the leader was what 14 under par, was 4 shots clear.
Yeah.
There weren't too many people going the other way. So that's the draw of player power, and that's what gets people excited. And that's what gets them driving to places like destinations like Ballyliffin. They will make the effort to see the stars.
So, which would you prefer then, Joe? Would you prefer Padraig Harrington to have made the cut, to be up there in the top 10, say, going into yesterday and battling for the lead this afternoon? Or would you prefer to have Justin Rose there at a price? I mean, had the Irish players shown any sort of reasonable form this weekend, you would have had an entirely different picture. The fact is they didn't, and Rory was particularly disappointing. And that's why we're focusing in on the absence of, real sparkle in the field, because we didn't have anybody from the home group doing anything.
Yeah, sure, but Harrington competing and Rose being in the tournament aren't mutually exclusive.
They're not necessarily, but...
Like having a Rose is a nice safety net. Who knows Eric Van Rooyen?
But what if he misses the cut, like?
Jorge Campello. Look, there is only so far you can control what's going to happen on the course. I appreciate that. But I'm just saying last year we had Matsuyama, we had Rose, we had Ram. He won't come back again, I wouldn't think, if he's not defending champion. There is a worry if you don't dish out the hello money, let's call it, that you end up with the Irish lads and potentially not much else. I mean, McGinley's got that challenge next year.
Right, so who's going to pay the hello money?
I don't know who usually pays it. The sponsors?
Yes. But I mean, you have a rather complex sponsor situation here in this one, in that you have the overall Rolex series, which is clearly sponsored by Rolex. They put X amount of millions into the 7 tournaments that are so named. You have Dubai Duty Free. They do not put anything like the amount of money in that would allow you to pay appearance fees out of what they contribute.
Okay.
The home club here and the local community put up about $500,000. Falch Ireland would have done similarly. And that's it. There's your cake. Now, depending if you want to divide it in a certain way, I mean, what the European Tour, their primary function is to present golf for the benefit of the public with their own players in action. Now, the players come through the ranks through the prize money system. I mean, do you want a situation in which they're going to be picking up top prize money of, say, 250 or 300,000 euro, as you have in South Africa? Or do you want to give them serious prize money, even at a lower level, which will help them to stay on tour and to become star players ultimately? That's the function of the European Tour. Now, if you want spectacle, fine.
Yeah.
But I don't think you're going to get both unless somebody has very deep pockets and is prepared to spend that money. Carroll's had and did.
Okay.
But that day is gone.
Dermot, I want everything.
Well.
And I want it now.
Well, I think what you don't want is, again, from Philip's piece, the leaderboard, the world rankings of the leaderboard: 199th, 124th, 163rd, 153rd, 244th, 584th, 442nd, and 113th. That's not a leaderboard that's going to inspire a lot of people to come out today or to drive up from Dublin. But Dermot makes some really, really valid points. It's hard. It's a difficult balance. It's a really, really difficult balance.
Yeah, everything's definitely weighed in favour of the big players, that's for sure.